Hi friends, welcome back to the Autism Little Learners Podcast. I'm Tara, a speech-language pathologist who has spent 25 years working with young autistic children and their families. Today we're going to talk about a topic that brings up a lot of feelings for educators, therapists, and parents, the Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS. Specifically, why PECS might not be enough for preschoolers. Now, before I dive in, I want to be clear. PECS is not evil. It's not bad. For many kids, it has opened the door to communication, and that's something to celebrate. But PECS on its own isn't enough. Our preschoolers need more than compliance-based exchanges to build rich, lifelong communication. Hi, I'm Tara, and this is the Autism Little Learners Podcast. I am a speech-language pathologist with a twist. I've run my own communication-based classroom for over 2 decades, and I'm so excited to share actionable tips and strategies for supporting young autistic children. My goal is to help you feel more confident and successful when teaching your autistic child or students at the early childhood level. If you are ready to learn some tried and true strategies that really work, this is the podcast for you. Let's get started. As we get started, let's talk a little bit about what PECS stands for and what it is. It stands for the Picture Exchange Communication System, and it was developed in the 1990s by Andy Bondi and Lori Frost. The system teaches kids to exchange a picture to request something they want. Over time, the phrases get more complex, moving from handing a single picture to building sentences like, I want ball, and eventually adding attributes like colors and numbers. For a long time, PECS was considered gold standard. And how do I know that? Because I was trained in PECS more than once, and I know many of you listening were too. Back in the 1990s and early 2000s, AAC devices were huge, expensive, and not accessible for most families or schools. So PECS was the best option we had. I went to PECS training in the 1990s, like I said, and I'll never forget sitting in one of those trainings back then practicing the 2-step error correction procedure. Here's how it worked. If a child gave the wrong picture, we had to take the correct picture, hold it up, say the word, and prompt the child to look at it. But don't give them the item. Then, step 2, we prompted them, sometimes even physically, hand over hand, to the right picture. And even when they finally did it correctly, you still didn't give it to them. I remember practicing this over and over during the training session, and even then my gut was screaming, this feels so unnatural. It didn't feel like communication, it felt like compliance. And now with the lens of neurodiversity affirming practices, I can see exactly why it felt wrong. We weren't honoring communication attempts, we were controlling behavior. That memory wasn't the only one that stuck with me. I had a student who learned to build PECS sentences like, I want crackers. He was so proud of himself and it gave him a real way to communicate. But then came the next step in the training. According to the PECS protocol, it was time to move him up by adding in numbers or some kind of attribute. So we were adding in the numbers, things like, I want 3 crackers. The problem, he didn't want 3 crackers. He just wanted crackers. He wanted all of them. But we were told that this was the next step, so we physically prompted him through it. He became so stressed, by the time we finally gave him the crackers, he would smash them in frustration. Again, my gut was screaming, this doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel natural, this isn't communication. But it was the late 90s and the early 2000s, and every training told us this was the only way. Looking back now, I realize my instincts were right. Forcing kids into compliance doesn't build joyful, authentic communication. So what are the bigger issues with PECS? Well, you've probably heard it. There's a compliance focused, and kids are required to perform a behavior before they get what they want. It's not authentic communication. Number 2, frustration and meltdowns. Withholding those desired items until the exchange is done, quote, correctly often causes distress. 3, lacking natural language modeling. PECS doesn't involve naturally modeling the language in context, which we know is essential. 4, prompt dependency. Kids often would wait then for adults to set it up instead of communicating spontaneously. 5, limited scope. PECS is strong for requests, but communication's about so much more. Protesting, commenting, asking questions, sharing feelings. And I know that there is that commenting piece later on for PECS, but it just seems like our students never really got there in a way that felt authentic, right? It was more during an activity like, okay, what do you see here? And then they comment. And then 6, it can be bulky and impractical. Binders and picture cards aren't realistic long term. And honestly, how many non-speaking autistic adults do you see using PECS books in the community? I have seen 0, and that's over 27 years now. All right, let's take a look also at what the research says. A 2008 systematic review by Ostrin, Wolf, and Rush looked at research behind PECS, and they found PECS can work for teaching requests, or as they call it, manding, and sometimes labeling items, which is called tacting. But there's little evidence it helps kids develop broader skills like asking questions, connecting socially, having conversations. The overall evidence is limited according to that research. The conclusion? There may not be one best communication system. Instead, a multimodal approach using multiple methods is often most effective. They also cautioned us that PECS isn't meant to be a long-term solution. Kids should transition to systems that can handle larger vocabularies and more complex communication. Now, some of you might be thinking, but PECS is evidence-based, right? Well, it's complicated. According to ASHA, the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, evidence practice is about 3 things. 1, research evidence, and I think that's what most people lean on, right, when you hear evidence-based. So what the studies say. But then the other 2 are clinical experience, so the knowledge and judgment we bring from our training and experiences, and very importantly, number 3, client perspectives, the values and lived experiences of the child and their family. And we have autistic adults, both speaking and non-speaking, who have given their lived experiences, and we need to heavily lean on that and learn from that. So yes, there's some research behind PECS, but research is one piece, and the other 2 matter too. When I think back to my trainings, my clinical judgment was telling me this doesn't feel good, and that's valid evidence too. And when we listen to autistic adults, their lived experiences add powerful insight. Julie Roberts, an autistic SLP and founder of the Therapist Neurodiversity Collective, wrote in 2020, "The fundamental goal of ABA is compliance with the will of the person in the position of authority. This is completely counterintuitive to self-advocacy, self-determination, and upholding human rights and dignity." She explains that forcing children to earn communication through snacks, stickers, or toys isn't teaching communication, it's teaching compliance, and it undermines dignity and autonomy. Jordan Zimmerman, a non-speaking autistic adult who didn't get access to robust AAC until she was 18, put it powerfully. PECS is a requesting system, not a communication system. There is serious harm in limiting someone's communication to a few picture cards, in that the student is only allowed to communicate the few words that have been pre-selected by another person. When we limit or control someone's communication, we're deciding their worth and assigning them value. For Jordan, being limited to PECS meant frustration, overwhelm, and years of segregation. People assumed she didn't understand language, when in reality she just didn't have the tools to show it. Once she got robust AAC, her world opened up. That's why true evidence-based practice means integrating the research, yes, but also our clinical experience and the voices of autistic people. When we do that, it becomes clear PECS may have a role, but it is not enough. Building on that, here's a recap of why PECS is not enough. It focuses too heavily on requests. It can reduce spontaneity. It risks prompt dependency. It violates bodily autonomy when hand-over-hand prompting is used. It's not neurodiversity affirming in many practices. To be fair, PECS does have some benefits. Number 1, it's accessible. No expensive tech needed. 2, it can be a stepping stone, a way for the child to realize my communication has power. And 3, it does fit easily into ABA-style teaching programs. So yes, PECS can help, but it should never be the final stop. Here's the good news. It's not the 1990s anymore. Technology has completely changed the landscape. Back then, PECS felt like the only option, but today we have iPads, apps, and robust speech-generating devices that are portable and affordable. And here's the key. Robust AAC systems give kids access to thousands of words, not just 50 or 100 pictures. With PECS, a child can say, I want cracker. With robust AAC, they can say, I want crackers, no crackers, I'm hungry, that cracker is silly, can I have a goldfish instead? Or even, I don't like crackers. It's the difference between transactional communication and true language access. Experts like Rachel Madel remind us we need to model robust AAC without expectation, just like we talk to babies long before they talk back. Kids need to see language in use. And neurodiversity affirming approaches emphasize connection, not compliance. Every communication attempt, gestures, sounds, pictures, AAC counts. So, common questions we hear. Does PECS stop kids from talking? No, but it also doesn't promote robust language growth the way modeling AAC does. Should kids start with PECS before they go to AAC? No, I used to think that, but there are no prerequisites for AAC. Kids do not have to prove themselves by being able to point or match or any of that because we start with modeling. It starts on us. And another question, isn't PECS easier? And yeah, maybe short term, but long term, kids need systems that can grow with them, not ones that they will outgrow quickly. At a snack time, a PECS exchange might end with a child handing you a picture of crackers, transaction done. With robust AAC, you could model, want crackers, and then expand, I like crackers, or even no crackers. That leads to language growth. One builds a single pathway, the other builds an entire road system. So is PECS evil? No. But is it enough for preschoolers? Absolutely not. Preschool is a critical time for language, social growth, and connection. Limiting kids to PECS is like giving them one crayon when they deserve the whole box. Our job is to give them systems that grow with them, that honor all the ways they communicate, and set them up for a lifetime of connection. And that means modeling robust AAC daily, valuing every communication attempt, teaching beyond requests, seeing PECS, if used, only as a stepping stone, not the end goal. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know this is a topic that stirs up a lot of memories, especially those of us who are trained in PECS. If this episode resonated, be sure to share it with a colleague, parent, or friend. Remember, communication is about connection, not compliance, and our preschoolers deserve nothing less. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye. I'm sending a big virtual hug your way because you just finished another episode of the Autism Little Learners Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. If you have had success with any of the strategies that you learned about in this podcast, I would love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram or Facebook at Autism Little Learners. Don't forget to grab your free visual support starter set by going to autismlittlelearners.com/visuals. And always remember to find the good in every day.